So switch this over. So welcome everyone out in virtual reality. I'm Michael Naylor, and I'm calling from the outlying outreaches of the United States and in Maine, South Portland, Maine. We're right on the coast here, where it's brisk but joyful, 15 degrees out, and we're definitely entering the cave of winter here. And I'm talking to Eric from Australia, where it's sunny and in the summer. So we're really talking to two different atmospheric arrangements. And Eric's here to guide us through the agony, the ecstasy of the type 1, and just what his journey's been. And so that said, it's a pleasure to have you here, and just welcome you to just, tell your story and see where it takes you. And, if you need to take a couple photographs of the background, I know you love photography, so just, pull the camera out. So anyway, so welcome.
Yeah, good to be here, Michael.
Yeah. So when did you discover the Enneagram?
I discovered it in about mid-'80s. A friend of mine gave me Helen Palmer's book in about 85, I think.
Wow.
And read it and was quite interested, but really didn't, I think I guessed that I was one, but I didn't really take it on as a path at that point. It was sort of an interesting observation. Then it kind of grew on me, I guess, somehow over time. And that was when I was still living in California, actually.
Oh.
And then I moved out to Australia, and I was getting settled here. And there was a guy, Lawrence Grazios, came over and taught a course in our little town of Avalon, where I was living at the time, and I signed up for that. And that's probably where I really took it on more as a path. I think being in a group situation like that, where we're really going more in depth and discussing and hearing people, describe their types and the kind of suffering and challenges of the type. Mm-hmm. So that's probably when I really got into it. That also coincided, actually, of kind of me discovering my take on the Enneagram, and that I discussed in my book, Essential Wholeness. Mm-hmm. I was also at that time teaching, I'm a psychologist, and I was teaching at an academic institution, the Australian College of Applied Psychology. I was teaching basic counseling and psychotherapy courses, including family therapy and couples therapy, and kind of a real integrated kind of introduction to being a therapist. And I was pondering this question, which I had been for some time since I'd started teaching, is what's the common reality that different psychotherapeutic approaches are all trying to address? Because I got great benefit personally from different therapeutic and spiritual modalities. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I was just on the path of one therapy fits all kind of thing. I benefited from lots of different approaches, and I saw that my clients benefited from lots of different approaches. Mm-hmm. And plus all these different models. And I think last check, there's 100 and something psychotherapeutic models available. There must be something true in all of them.
Yeah.
And I like Ken Wilber's idea that everybody's right, although partially right, including myself. So I was looking for a model, trying to understand how people evolve and grow and wake up. And I was sitting in the Enneagram in a workshop, and Lawrence was summarizing all the types, just kind of was at the end of the first day, and he just was going around the outside of the circle and describing each type. And I thought, whoa, wow, that's it. the kind of core strength and preoccupation of each type, correlates with a phase and a complete change cycle. And this was just really kind of quite a big insight for me. I didn't have the whole thing fleshed out, but I kind of grokked enough of it to kind of think, whoa, I got to do some more work on this. And so there was two things that were happening at once for me. Once I had this good insight into, a kind of a systemic understanding of the Enneagram and of how people evolve and change, while really being confronted with my oneishness.
Yeah.
Although I was like a 4 wannabe. Probably as my interest in psychotherapy and kind of deep and meaningful stuff, and kind of a bit of an artistic bent. I am a 1. I'm a sexual 1 to wing. So I'm a bit of a counter 1. I'm not the standard perfectionistic ones. I mean, you look at the way I keep my house or my desk or my workshop, you wouldn't think, oh, this guy's a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more the reformer, idealist, and that kind of a 1. I'm not, and being a sexual 1, I'm not that interested in stuff even. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in the relationships, and of course, one-on-one relationships are messy. You can't control them, and that's some of the joy. I mean, is getting messy. I like rolling my sleeves up and getting into the mess. So, so it was that, and actually, I was confused for a while in the workshop because my first book I wrote and published is a photography book called Reflections from Down Under, Getting Lost and Finding Yourself in Nature. And it's a chronicle of a year that I spent hitchhiking around Australia. Well, 9 months hitchhiking and hiking and getting into all the wild places and stuff, and basically recovering from my divorce from my first marriage, and this real, hero's journey kind of, long, dark, very, very long, dark night of the soul kind of thing, it went on. And I'm kind of exploring very much my connection to 4 in this book. And Lawrence, who I gave a copy of the book for, he reads it because, oh, you're definitely a 4. And this is like, this is the danger of being typed by somebody else.
Yep.
Someone who's an expert, and they don't really know, you can easily grab one little, aspect of someone, or like in a segment of time, and say, oh, during this time, I was very 4-ish. Or this time I was, if I go to work, when I go to conferences, like Enneagram conferences, and I'm with a whole bunch of people, I turn into a 7, I'm like the social butterfly. And I want to take in everything. I don't want to miss out on anything,
Yeah.
So that was really helpful in finding my type, is looking at my, integration and disintegration points, because those are really strong in me. So how could I be both of those? And of course, not really wanting to see the one-ishness, the ego doesn't really want to see itself. That's not very ideal or perfect to see how fucked up you are.
I hear you. Yeah.
That kind of, spoils the self-image a bit. So, that was, I think, like a lot of people, when it hit me, that, and it was someplace in the workshop towards the end where I was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I felt nauseous. It was like, it's like an ayahuasca, session.
Yeah.
And seeing the suffering I caused myself and others. Really, that's that, and especially my intimate partners.
Oh yeah.
How my one-ishness, how my criticalness, how my nothing's ever good enough. Always comparing to an ideal, impossible. Amazing woman of my mind.
They're hard to find. Because, yeah. Well,
yeah, they don't exist.
That's right.
Momentarily. They exist,
Yeah.
Momentarily, I can be a god too,
Yeah.
And momentarily, they can be goddesses. But
yeah.
It's been a lovely, humiliating and humbling and experience. Really, being having the mirror of the Enneagram to kind of see myself. Yeah.
Well, I had this similar shock when a therapist said, read Don Risso's Personality Types in 1996 and read the 4. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this is like the worst news I'd ever received. It just mapped my whole interior story of suffering and woe and reactivity. And it was, I felt like I just got walloped. It's like, boom. And, but it was hopeful, although devastating at the same time. And then, the path of humiliation and humility and all of that kind of unveiling of layers is both exciting, and I'm always surprised when a new layer shows up. I see a new unknown piece that's been hanging around for 30 years. And I go, oh my God, how did I miss that? But there it is. So, so you mentioned, the sort of the themes around judgment of others, criticism, etc. And I, ones often have a place where that rises for the partnership for sure. But I wondered, how you have worked with your patterns. What's helped you to develop more eyes to see them, or more presence to see them? Are there particular practices that you've done, or just
I'm a 1. I'm very hardworking, and I want to be thorough and get it right. And that started, even of course before I, knew the Enneagram. And when I was just 18, I kind of went into a bit of a depression, smoking too much pot, no doubt. Probably seeking enlightenment through marijuana a little bit. And there was a few things that helped me, and one was, I was really fortunate at that time that I was living with some friends, and Becky, who had been my girlfriend, got pregnant to my best friend, and then she had a home birth, and I was at the birth, and this was like a huge awakening for me. This just, I don't know, it got me in touch with it woke me out of my trance and brought me into the here and now. 2 months later, I'm working in an aged care facility, and I'm taking a woman's blood pressure who was in the intensive care section. And she died while I was taking her blood pressure. And well, so I was just witness to her passing. Like I had her in my arms when she passed, in my hands. And I think this kind of awakened something. And also I was still kind of struggling and depressed. And somebody throws in my lap Primal Scream by Arthur Janoff.
I did that too. You're the only other person I've met except John Lennon who's done primal therapy. So I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. So, and here I am, just this 18, 19-year-old hippie kid, no money. I mean, kind of on food stamps and working part-time. And well, no, I wasn't on food stamps at that point, but I was, just a minimum wage job sort of thing. And, but I thought I read the book, cover to cover really quickly. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I need. Anyway, the house we were living in broke up, and I heard about this commune that was looking for people, and it was this beautiful place on 420 acres up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so I went there, and it was this really cool bunch of people, this band, and they were doing all this avant-garde stuff, and I seemed to fit in really well there. After like a week of being there, this couple came to the commune, and they were a couple of therapists from Berkeley doing Reichian and bioenergetic therapy, primal type therapy. And they even said, oh, we'd like to do a breath work, kind of body work demonstration. Would anybody like to be a volunteer? And I'm like, oh. And so that was kind of, and so I did that. And then they were camping out. They were kind of on a holiday, a vacation, and camping out. And they invited me to come out and have, sessions with them in the woods, out in the forest, beside a creek. And well, Richard says, well, look at, you give us a little bit of money, and I'll tell you what, I'll train you how to do body work, and you can work on me in exchange for sessions. I mean, you couldn't, who thinks, somebody's looking out for me, right?
Yeah.
There are forces that, like in the Course in Miracles, there's the curriculum, and, God has a plan,
Yeah.
And it just comes and finds you, it certainly came and found me. And so I had a few months with them, and then we ended up moving into our own place because I really connected with them, and we started what was called the Primal Yoga Fellowship. And we incorporated as a church for tax-free tax-free benefits. And Richard was a minister in the Universal Life Church as a draft dodging exercise. But we got tax-free status. And the other thing I got from Richard was the interest in Carlos Castaneda. So I was spending a lot of time in nature and applying the kind of meditative methods and kind of awareness that Carlos was talking about in his book, and really applying them and having really amazing magical experiences and emotionally open experiences and being, vulnerable with nature. So this has been one of my key practices, I guess you'd say, right from when I first had my first awakening, really, and that is connecting to my body and my emotions and opening to nature. Awesome. And so that's really been a huge process for me. And of course, in that, which I think is very important for ones, is seeing the perfection in everything. And that's really easy to see the perfection in nature for me, anyway. So, and seeing the perfection in all the messiness of nature. And then that's kind of being mirrored in seeing the messiness of my own emotional nature. And I think for ones, that's really important, because I think for ones, you can easily get caught up in your head and ideas and ideals and information and stuff, or in doing and being, a doer, which I'm plenty good at, but, not so good at, the dealing with emotion and the feeling. But it really, that has just, to me, been a big part. And with that came, body work and yoga, and then I, I've gotten interested in dance, and I got into a dance form about that time called contact improvisation, which is like a combination of Aikido, martial arts, gymnastics, and modern dance, kind of all rolled into one. And yeah, so I've had, one thing's kind of led to another, and then I decided I want to become a therapist, so because I was getting kind of alternative, it's kind of learning alternative therapeutic methods, but I thought I'll go off to university and really do this. Also, about this time, I discovered Buddhist teachings a bit, largely through Rajneesh/Osho. And there was a lot of those kind of groups starting up, and our Primal Yoga Fellowship was like already kind of along those lines that a lot of the Rajneesh groups were kind of getting into, which was a lot of primal kind of stuff and very expressive therapies and things like that. So I started, and the like the Carlos Castaneda books, they teach really mindfulness meditation in a lot of ways, how to quiet your internal dialogue and how to really be present and expand your field of awareness. So I started getting more and more interested in meditation, and that's been a big part of my journey. Just about the time. Well, so then I went off to university, and then I'm studying, modern dance, and I did an improvisational theater, and so and my master's thesis was the therapeutic benefits of improvisational theater. And so this has been a big part of my journey, is the kind of creative expression, and again, these were processes that we did, kind of drew on a Grotowski method, which was this organic, kind of moving your body and sharing energy and improvising until you kind of, these archetypal stories would emerge, and and you kind of create a play through improvisation, but it's very emotionally opening and relationship building, and and kind of these deep human archetypes would kind of reveal themselves, and your own tendencies, your own kind of primal tendencies, and to be able to kind of explore them in a collective environment is very powerful for me too. So, that's when I also got into Gestalt therapy and family therapy and all these other therapies, and I've always been one, to practice what I preach. That's a very one-ish thing, I think. If you're an evolved one, you're just teaching what you've learned, So I've been always kind of, I guess, in a very one-ish way, trying to be the best I can be at what I do and be the best person I can be. I think that's motivated me in a positive way to seek out therapy, to seek out help, to admit I need help, to find good therapists, like try to find the best, but also learning and trusting that I'm going to be guided to the best, is that while I was at uni, a good friend of mine, a couple friends of mine, Jewish friends of mine, says, "Oh, I think you might be interested in this," and they handed me a copy of A Course in Miracles, and I buried myself in that for a few years. Actually, I ended up being in groups with Marianne Williamson for a couple years, and when I was living in LA for a couple years. So that's been a really big part of my path. For at least at that time, I kind of really got a lot out of it. And it really healed my relationship with Christianity.
Yeah.
Which I was born, in a pretty religious family in Lutheran. I was an altar boy and a crucifer, and I tried to get involved. I thought maybe it'd be more interesting if I was actually involved with the service. It didn't really help that much. But yeah, that's been really very informative for me, very helpful in realizing my spiritual nature, and to see through the one-ish preoccupations of my mind that keep me separated from God. Keep me in that state of separation.
Yeah, well, very interesting. I did primal therapy at something called the Berkeley Center in Berkeley and then went to Oregon, to the Oregon Center, did that for several years, and then got trained as one of the therapists. And I have another type 1 friend who I met there, who went on a very similar journey as yourself, just trying, body work, movement, whatever, and myself too, tons of dance and movement and yoga and modern dance. And then, I was interested, I think it was interesting, that the Hoffman process, which I know you're connected with or part of, but it's like, when I did that, I said, well, this is just primal therapy. They just, spruced it up a little bit and organized it in such a way that it's, it's a great experience. But I just felt like I'm back home again. This is what, I was trained to do. But so it's really fascinating to hear your journey, and just sounds like just that hunger, to transform, to get to the bottom of things, to, whatever, create peace within yourself. And so one of the things I was wondering, that sometimes ones will say that, the challenge of opening the heart is sometimes one that they struggle with. But what sounds like, all the stuff you were doing was all conducive to that, especially the primal therapy, of course, the body work. But but I wonder, how do you notice your relationship with that heart center now? Like what's how is it in your daily life?
I have a heart-centered life. I start out the day putting my heart next to my sweetheart's heart. Catherine and I would, when we wake up in the morning, which is usually the same time, we just lie together for a while, feeling the heart connection and really dropping into the heart, until we can kind of I can feel her opening her heart, she can feel me opening my heart, and I can feel me opening my heart to her open heart.
Beautiful.
And there's this stillness that you have. Of course, you have to be resting in to feel that energetic, opening. And then after warm drink, hot drink or something, then we sit and meditate also for 20 minutes, half an hour, and that's my start of the midday. And then I go off to work. And I think my primary job with my clients, which is in a lot of ways my practice, is how do I create an open-hearted space for people to come into and open their hearts.
Beautiful.
As well as to open their minds and to, and get connected to their bodies.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly, kind of operating from the 3 centers, as Enneagram so beautifully describes, and to be a whole person, and you got to kind of be able to operate from those 3 centers, and I guess with all the chakras, all the centers in some way.
Yeah.
So that's, and whenever I'm, thinking my client is stuck, the first thing I check in is how open is my heart,
Yeah.
and can I love my client kind of silently, from just in my own body, can I, open my heart and hold them with more of a loving presence. And that almost always shifts things, but it doesn't even matter what's being said, quite often. Or because like I say to a lot of my clients, it's often not, what you say, it's how you say it, and where it comes from. And of course, even sometimes silence and stillness can convey that even better than words. That's so and that's become pretty easy for me. That's I've been at this a long time. I had a really big breakthrough when I was 60 that I think has really made a significant difference. I've had a lot of big openings or awakenings, I guess, but I had kind of left my second marriage, which was my marriage where I had kids, and I ended up having to leave that. It was just I just knew I had to go, which is not easy when you're one and you're a marriage counselor. To admit failure. To admit failure is very humiliating and humbling, but of course, that's often exactly what the ego needs. And for me, I've been constantly in my life forced through fate to not follow a conventional right lifestyle or the right way of doing things, that constantly having to kind of go beyond social norms of what's correct, because spirit's just always kind of saying, well, this is the next part of your journey, and to go against it would be just like, well, it's just impossible, really, because once you align yourself to the Dharma, to the way things are, to truth, there's just only suffering and and stuckness, and well, basically what you see happening in the world
everywhere
most of the time.
That's for sure. Yeah.
But anyway, I'd left, and I had actually a kind of a 3-year very healing kind of tantric relationship, with a long distance relationship, and then I had to, again, spirit kind of said, no, I got to give that up. I'm not. That's not really where I'm going. And for a while, and then I was really on my own. I got kind of lonely, and not easy for a sexual one to be alone too long. but I was okay, and it was really deep learning, and I've always benefited from my periods of solitude. Not that it's not my preference, but it's important. But for a while, I had a relationship with a woman who was much younger than me. She's like 30 years younger than me. Really cutie, but father issues, if you could imagine. And I felt kind of lucky to have one night, one sexual experience with her. I thought that was enough, but it kind of went on for like five or 6 months, and in the end, she really kind of just acted badly and kind of blew up our relationship, if you could call it that. And I felt abandoned. I felt really, rejected and abandoned. And then like I'm sitting in my feelings of abandonment going, Eric, there's no way that a 30-year-old woman can abandon a 60-year-old man.
Oh God.
You know, that's you know, you had a good run, dude. Like, chill. But I was hurt, I was angry, and God bless her soul, she listened to some of my anger, or her, you know, infidelity and all this stuff. But in the end, I just said, no, I've got to get to the bottom of this. This is my attachment trauma. You know, this is,
yeah, of course.
And I sat down under the proverbial, you know, Bodhi tree, you know, kind of thing. And I said, okay, I'm not moving from this spot till I get to the bottom of this. And so I really just sat in meditation. And the other tool that's been very helpful for me is tapping, EFT, you know, EFT, emotional freedom technique, and just really leaning into emotion, you know, in my meditation, and then also tapping on the acupuncture points, and just keep going through layers and layers and layers, and all the way back to my, you know, premature birth trauma and stuff I kind of did a lot of in there decades ago in my primal days, but I had to revisit it and went right into the core of that. And you know, I couldn't blame the woman anymore. I just want to make that point. I couldn't blame the woman for rejecting me, and she's bad, I'm good, you know. Yeah. I did all the right things, I'm good, you know, I was the perfect partner. She fucked me over. I couldn't do it, you know, because I think I was lucky to have one night, you know, and it kept me going. It kept me going. Like, yeah, what is this? And I felt like since then, you know, it really brought me to the, you know, my core, to my essential being, and that's been pretty unshakable since then.
Oh, awesome.
I momentarily have some wobbles, you know, where the ego kind of wants to reassert itself, but it's you know, it's really wimpy, and it's just silly and stupid, and you know, and although I do have compassion for that part of me that still feels like it has to kind of go there, but for the most part, just, I mean, it's probably the benefit of getting older. It's, you know, finally all this stuff you've been working on for decades.
It's true. You break through and it's like, oh God.
Yeah.
Broke through it before I died. Yeah.
So that's been good, and I think that's, you know, I mean, I know, you know, I think that's been replaced with just gratitude, you know, with my comparing and judging and wishing for the better thing and longing for the better thing, because I, you know, get into all the foolishness too. All that's just really mostly been replaced with this gratitude for this moment, for everything I've had in my life, every opportunity, even every challenge, even, you know, that kind of crisis where I'm thrown into my abandonment, you know, attachment trauma. I was born a month early, you know, I was back and forth through the humidity crib. My mom went into postnatal depression after she came out of the hospital, you know, so there was really a deep wound there, which of course I think the Enneagram is always showing us where a wound is, you know, and how we've learned to cope and try to avoid the wound.
Yeah, yeah.
So core practice now, go straight into the wound. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Resistance is futile.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, beautiful. Yeah, just what a serendipitous meeting with the 30-year-old annihilator, who somehow tapped that core wound, and boy, what a gift. And that you had the wisdom guidance to know that you had to go into it and feel it. That seems to me to be the core of all my work, is whatever that suffering is to drop into it and try not to create a fantastical story in my imagination, but just to feel the simplicity of it. So yeah, awesome. Well, so I'm wondering about, one of the things that are subjects that type ones often will talk about is that they seem to have inherited a very powerful inner critic that they notice, that they get judged by, and then on a bad day they project it out to those around them because they want to share it, of course, and not be so, individually tortured. And I wonder, what your relationship with that inner critic psychic structure has been for you.
Yeah, well, much of my life it's ruled me. I think currently I'm relatively free of that, and I think it's gone from inner critic to great appreciator of the perfection of the chaos.
That's awesome. I like that.
I mean, it's still there, not so much in terms of an inner critic. It's still there. I think maybe it's kind of hidden a little bit by still, as a sexual one, still wanting to be the best husband I can be, and wanting to be the best therapist I can be, and holding myself to a high standard. But I think mostly I don't do that with a kind of a meanness or, harshness, a Protestant, threat of punishment if I'm not good,
Yeah.
which I grew up with, so that's largely, dissolved, I think. But for a lot of my life, I certainly interjected my dad's critical voice, and he's German descent, and which is kind of one-ish two at times, I guess, and just the old-fashioned parenting techniques of the 50s and 60s, that was all kind of taken in, and I was good at doing it to myself. I became an expert at scolding myself and emotionally beating myself up, and, oh, Eric, you idiot, how could you do that? Oh, you gotta try harder. Gotta be good. And that used to be, I've softened so much. It used to be that, and then I'd be like so much tension in my body, trying to consciously control everything and stay on top of every, bad emotion or bad thought or, bad or, imperfect behavior, and trying to control everything consciously.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
and then kind of using hard work to try to get myself out of that, And of course, that's a bit of a fine line. A little bit of that's good, having discipline, to do a regular yoga practice, discipline to meditate, discipline to, get body work, and, be willing to scream and cry and, get into the messiness of it all. So, yeah, I think that, again, that was, I think I've relaxed myself out of the inner critic a lot by listening to my body and what my body needs to feel relaxed and content and at peace, and and able to give and receive love.
Mm.
And if you're beating yourself up and you're being harsh and critical to yourself, you end up being that way to others. And that just completely, blocks the flow of love and joy and, all the good things.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's by putting love first and joy first and peace first. It makes that it also means I can treat the inner critic with love and patience and acceptance. And I don't even have to try to get rid of it. It's sort of, I think I end up kind of loving it into, submission.
Yeah, well, one thing I appreciate about the Course in Miracles, I went through the 365-day exercises and read all the material, and I always felt like yourself a different, just really a healing orientation around Christ, which is so positive compared to Catholicism, kind of anti-Christ teaching I learned. But there was so much mercy in the Course, just space to just be with whatever, which was really pivotal for me. It's actually what got me into recovery from substance abuse back in '82. Came after I'd read and worked with the Course in Miracles for a couple of years. So just really gentleness, that whole gentleness of heart and spirit, and just really was beautiful, and is you can't get enough of that, really. So
and I think that Course in Miracles is really good for me that way too, because one, it gave my one-ishness this daily, discipline that I could really, focus in and do the daily meditation exercise, read a part of the text. And it's all up, you're right, it's all about forgiveness and acceptance and, and trusting in the Holy Spirit. And I was so lucky, I was like halfway into my second go through A Course in Miracles, because I didn't get it right the first time.
I must go back.
I got to do it again.
Oh, that's funny.
Because obviously I still wasn't perfect, but I was about halfway through, and a friend of mine told me about 5-MeO-DMT, and had a chance with this guy Tomas to try this plant medicine substance thing, and I had, and I did, and of course it just completely blasted away my ego, went straight into the light, the infinite loving light of the universe, and where everything just is light and love and joy, which of course Course in Miracles keeps talking about. But it was like I completely had the experience of non-dual reality, of God's peace, love, freedom. And so what that really kind of cemented my commitment to realizing that without having to ingest the substance, I benefited from psychedelics in my life, on real pivotal times, but I've never really become, other than when I was really young for a couple of years there as a teenager, I kind of got it's a bit of a pothead, but other than that, and actually I was like the perfect one, man. I always had the best weed. I managed to find the best dealer. I had the whole image. I was a roadie in a rock band, and always had the best weed for the band and all the groupies and stuff. I even did that really well. but but other than that, I've always just kind of used some these substances just kind of like body work, like something that you get now and then to open up, like Aldous Huxley said, the doors of perception, but then to use that as, okay, what are the practices that I need for that?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was very helpful. And that, when you know underneath all the trappings of the mind and the world and things, when you know that under, kind of the deep beneath what comes and goes, all the impermanence is this eternal bliss, eternal being, that God is there, like, it's very liberating, it's takes away a lot of fear and mistrust, and like you say, it makes it easier just to lean right into the scariest places and realize that, well, actually, there's, like Course Miracle says, there's nothing to fear. Which I always took two ways. I always took that two ways. There's nothing out there to fear, but also there's no substance to fear. It's just an illusion, a separation.
Well, so, I'm curious about if you say a little bit about relationship with your kids. Like, are they a part of your joy and experience now? And as a type 1 father, did you help them become more perfect than they were, or like, how did that one show up?
Well, luckily I was pretty awake by the time I had my kids. So I was 34 when my son was born. Is that right? 33 or I can't remember. Anyway, so, and I had been, working with myself since I was 19. So, so I think, not that I didn't make life hard for them with my one-ishness sometimes. You could ask them about that, and they know the Enneagram. My daughter especially is quite into actually just more recently really getting into the Enneagram. She's starting to do kind of coaching and stuff with people, so she's finding that very helpful. But as a parent, well, one, I was, really the high side of one, I was just committed to being the best dad I could be. Although I do have a good story. So my son is just about ready to turn 18, and he's just coming to the end of high school, right? And I'm looking at him thinking, oh shit, I haven't done a good enough job with him. Seeing a lot of his flaws and ways he's not really got it together very well, like, oh, I should have, gave him better manners or whatever. I can't remember well what it was, but and so I kind of go on this last minute, like, oh, the time is running out. So this last minute kind of dash to the finish line to try to get my last bit of good parenting in. And at one point, my son turns to me and goes, Dad, stop, just stop. And I go, what do you mean? Dad, it's too late. I'm already fucked up like you, and I'm already fucked up like Mom, but it's my problem now.
That's great.
And if I need help, I'll ask you. And I thought, damn, I've done okay.
I did my job. Oh God, that's hilarious.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, when your kids can talk to you that way,
it's a good sign.
Teenage son can talk to you that way and take on that responsibility for himself. He's a 5, he's pretty amazing young man. He's check him out. His stage name is Jesse Redwing. He's a blues artist. He sings, songwriter, plays awesome guitar and harmonica. He's like an old black man stuck in a
white body, huh?
Jewish Protestant white boy's body,
So tell me his name again.
His stage name is Jesse Redwing.
Redwing. Okay. I'll have to YouTube him. Listen to him.
Yeah. Well, he got the name Redwing because one time when I was back in my hippie days in Santa Cruz, I was meditating in a very Carlos Castaneda way next to the San Lorenzo River. And I was wondering about changing my name because I was born Eric Borcherding. And, it was a bit of a hassle of a name. And this red-winged blackbird settled down on a bush next to where I was meditating. And I thought, that's it. I'll call myself Eric Redwing. And which lasted for about a week. But but I told that to my kids, and my son gave me shit about that for years, teasing me about that. And then like years later, he adopts it as a stage name.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And my daughter, she's a type 1. Pretty sure she's a sexual type 1 also. And so we have a lot in common, which for a while she was really pissed off about. I mean, first she really liked it, because we had so much in common. And then I think when she started to see it and see me and see my imperfections and see the troubles with being a 1, then she really was angry at me for a while. But we're kind of better now. And of course, we really understand each other a lot, and how we can suffer and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah.
But she's doing really well. She's moved over to LA to pursue her acting and music career. She's also a musician and songwriter, and she's also an actress. She was in the last season of Nashville. She was the Alana character, and so she got to do both crafts at the same time. She got to write songs, play guitar, sing, and act at the same time. So
wow, that's awesome.
I'm very proud of her. She's doing really well too.
Yeah. Well, sounds like you did a
and
good
she
job.
also does contact improvisation. So we dance together and
Awesome.
5 rhythms. We do 5 rhythms together, and we like the same kind of music. So it's
what a joy.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
very lucky.
Okay.
I think that as far as my one-ishness with them, it was hard because they both talked about being scared of me at times. Because, when I'm angry, people know. Even if I'm trying to be, not angry. There's an intensity there that, was scary for them. And so sometimes they'd be obedient in the short run, just as I learned to be as a kid, and then probably at times would have a bit of resentment that I would have to kind of work hard to undo, because I didn't want my kids to fear me or resent me. Sort of swore I wouldn't do that to my kids, but in all humility I did at times. So I think that's been helpful, is also for me to apologize when I had scared them, or had them feel judged and and not good enough, and Yeah. So, and they've been, and it, look, it works so much better as a parent when you really trust in your kid's own, good-heartedness and common sense, and trust that, their curriculum will lead them where they need to go, that God has a plan for them, so to speak, and to respect that. So I think I've done a pretty good job of that, because they're like following very unique paths. They're very much following their hearts and doing what they love and doing it well, and very real, open, honest, genuine human beings, who don't take shit from anybody.
That too, that's good.
And in this day and age, that's really important, because a lot of shit going around,
It seems to be expanding exponentially sometimes. It's just so, yeah. Well, so just one of the questions, just really appreciate all the beauty and openness and humor, and it seems to me that type ones, when they get healthier, their ability to laugh at themselves is quite beautiful. But I was just thinking, when you were a little guy, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, grade school, what was it like being a little one kid? I mean, I can imagine that sort of doing the right thing would have been pretty challenging, but what was true for you?
Well, not knowing what I was really looking for, which I think was love and unconditional acceptance. I would fluctuate between really working hard for approval or then doing the trapdoor one thing of, being Robin Hood. Behind the scenes, like stealing from my parents, especially my mom's wallet, money, shoplifting, sweets and junk food, and looking for love, in stuff. I think I tried hard to get a best friend. I think having a best friend, being a one-on-one type was really important to me. And I think I tried too hard, and and friends could only handle me so much, unless I could find, other boys that maybe were even more insecure than me. And often, and then I would sometimes in those friendships kind of feel superior. So I think I did a lot of fluctuating between feeling inferior and feeling superior, depending on, probably being going for friendships with guys that were more wounded than me, or ones that seemed to be freer and cooler than me, So wanting to be with the cool kids, but often feeling I had to, no offense to all of you out there, having to be with the kind of geeky, not so cool kids. Which of course I realized down the track quite often, the geeky, not so cool ones ended up being kind of the more soulful human beings when you meet them at the high school reunion, like 15 years later, oh, you're way more interesting. So there was a lot of that, I think, and feeling, and I think it played out with my parents, of course, trying to do that, and then trying to be good, and then feeling never good enough. partly I think because of that attachment wound, that even when my parents would try to love me, I couldn't let it in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't right, and it wasn't good enough, and I couldn't receive their imperfect love. Something we talk about in family constellations a lot is, you know, saying to our parents, you know, I take your imperfect love. Oh, that was so hard for me to say the first time I had to say that, you know. But of course, all human beings' love is really, you know, shrouded in imperfection.
True.
And that's been really a you know, a big thing for me. But as a kid, what it meant is I would have these rages, you know, where I'd snap at some point and just, you know, be so pissed off at the unfairness, which I think legitimate, a lot of it, you know, my parents' rules and beliefs, and was, you know, really rigid and, you know, kind of 1950s Midwest rigidity, you know, with German, Norwegian culturalness thrown on top of that, you know, along with, you know, Americanism, you know, and all that. So, and then of course I would be in the bad books, you know, and I have to give it to my parents. I think they always loved me and forgave all my outbursts, you know, even to this day. Not that I have many outbursts these days, but even as an adult, when I go home and have these, my, you know, early days of Primal, going home to my parents and expressing my anger.
I hear you.
I think I've, you know, in my healing course, I've had to do the kind of inner child work of really giving to myself all those things my parents weren't able to. But, you know, I'm still working with my parents on that. Like, my dad is a couple of years ago, and I really love my dad. I respect him even more after what happened a couple of years ago. I was visiting, well, I guess it's more like 3 years ago. Anyway, we're talking about politics and stuff, which is always, he's Republican, and I don't know, trans political. But he was scoffing when I, you know, was kind of talking about 9/11 being an inside job and all this stuff, and he was just really scoffing at me. What do you know? And I'm like, Dad, like, you know, like I have a master's degree. I have people come pay me a lot of money for my, you know, expertise and understanding of things. And anyway, a couple of days later, he's scoffing at me, going, oh, what do you know? And I realized I was on the verge of just scoffing back at him. And I thought, oh no, that doesn't really work. That's just a one arguing with a, you know, 1-ish 9, you know. And I just said, Dad, you know, it really hurts when you scoff at me. You know, really, really hurts, you know. And he goes, I'm not scoffing at you. And I'm like, Dad. And he's like, oh, right. And he went really quiet. And my dad, you know, he's like 92, I think it was 90 at the time or something. And he was like, oh, right. And he gave me a genuine apology. You know, he really did. And I said to him, I said, you know, Dad, a lot of my friends, they've given up on their parents, you know, trying to speak the truth, trying to challenge them on their rigidities or whatever, you know. I want you to know, I've never given up on having the best relationship I can have with you, you know, and that's why I share what I think with you and how I feel, and because I want us to be really open and honest and try to learn from one another, you know, try to be in this together, not just be like Republicans and Democrats or like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the enemy. No, you're the enemy. What do you know? What do you know? Like, and it really, and he really, teared up, and I teared up, but we had a really good hug. And there's really been a shift in, even since then, in him being more interested and open with me. And I think this is the gift of, for you ones out there, I think trust this gift that we have, which is, you do want to make the world a better place. You do know that something better is possible. And, but the way to get it is through your vulnerability and asking for help and asking for understanding and asking for compassion and respect, not trying to argue with someone else to make them wrong so that you can be right, and and help them.
I wonder why that doesn't work. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Just beautiful content, and just really grateful for you, and really appreciate your beautiful soul. And I wish you didn't live so far away. But that's life.
Well, we might meet up at a conference again one of these days.
One of these, right? Yeah, I'm hopeful. It's hard to tell, but yeah. So just
hard to get out of Australia right now.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Especially when you don't want to get the jab, So I'm really clear that there's something really egotistical afoot with the whole COVID vaccine and all that stuff.
well, it's gotten such a bizarre time. Well, I'm grateful you're healthy and stay that way. And I will.
You too, Michael.
I will just stop this recording for now. I can just thank you so much, and